Welcome to CaCo Talks, the weekly podcast where conversations about life, hot topics, mental health, and more take center stage. We are your hosts, Catelyn and Courtney Geiger.
Together, we explore thought-provoking discussions with an ambient vibe that inspires open and honest dialogue. So sit back, relax, and join us for some insightful conversation that will leave you feeling informed and inspired.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to CaCo Talks. Tonight, we are doing kind of a rewind, but really more of a watch and review of the new docu-series, called Shiny Happy People.
That's a good word, docu-series.
Docu-series.
Rex.
Docu-series. But, so it's a docu-series about the Duggar family, which most people know. I didn't realize how mainstream they were, but they were very mainstream, actually.
For sure. Yeah. I feel like everybody knew who they were.
The Duggar. And if you don't know, I'm not even going to explain. Google it.
Go look it up.
Yes. You'll know what we're talking about.
Scandal. Okay.
So we watched the first episode. There's 4 episodes in the series. Mm-hmm. Each of them are about 45 to 50 minutes long. Mm-hmm. Which seems to be
on Prime.
On Amazon Prime, yes. Mm-hmm. Prime Video, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
And this seems to be the new style of documentary filmmaking. It'll be basically a 4-hour documentary, but split up into different episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Filmmaker wise, I don't know if I like that so much. I think it feeds into the whole like binge watching era that we're in now, which might work for, sales and ratings and all that. But sometimes it's kind of annoying because I'm like, I want to just sit through the whole thing, and now I gotta like episode by episode or whatever.
Oh my God, it's like a measly minute or two that you're going in between episodes.
I know, but then it still just breaks it up too. I don't know. Maybe because I like to watch things for a long time. So I would sit down and watch a 4-hour documentary, like totally.
No, I would rather watch it in 45-minute increments.
Maybe that's how people like things now. It's just doled out in little bites. But anyways, that's the style of this documentary series. And there's so many other documentary series that come out like this, like the Harry and Meghan was the same way. And I want to say that maybe the Ada Nicole Smith one, that's new. That's the new popular form of documentary now. It used to be just an hour and a half.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, most of the documentaries I watch are definitely in that style. Which I guess like a lot of true crime is in that style too. So
yeah, you're right. Well, they used to have the true crime
has always been
episodic.
True crime has always been like that though. So
yeah,
for the majority.
But it's
not even. I wouldn't even say because true crime is like. You're presenting the evidence. And I guess they could go on all day, but it's not to. It doesn't normally have to be to that extent. Like you might be able to cover a true crime case in 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Usually, I'm thinking about true crime series like I was just watching To Catch a Predator like the other day. Mm-hmm. That's like 30-minute increment. Yeah, that's actually a good one. I got into it. I was like, dang, not me being here watching all these pedos. But
that's the one on Netflix, right?
No, it's old with Chris Hansen. It used to be on network TV. Remember they would like set up these people.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Hansen, and he would like.
Yeah, you're right.
They'd be like use a decoy little like a young actor, and then like they would catch somebody who was trying to like.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know exactly what. Yeah, I think they're trying to bring that back. I really hope they do because it was really getting those criminals off the street.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it used to be like you would wait to see it come on network TV. So it'd be like 30 minutes. Oh, we got a predator, in Ohio this week. And next week we got a predator in like Tampa, So it was always that kind of level of anticipation versus now we binge everything. So it's like, I anticipate the entire thing coming out and then I can binge, but not so much like I am waiting for the next episode to drop. I think they should create a little anticipation and drop, periodically, but I'm not in charge of Netflix yet. I'm just kidding.
I think people would boycott Netflix if they did that.
You think so?
People want instant gratification, so yes, and I'm not gonna lie. When it comes to my TV shows, that's kind of what I want too. So,
well, I think the good part about it is you can watch it at your own pace. Versus
I do enjoy that. Mm-hmm.
Somebody else is setting the pace when you release it at certain times.
Exactly. So, yeah,
I hear that, and I don't think it's totally a bad model. I'm just saying it creates. The inverse of that is like people are expecting instant gratification, and it's like sometimes it's cool to slow down too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, depending on the work itself, for sure.
Yeah, and the material. But this isn't like that. This is a docu-series. It's very much shot like a trendy docu-series, which is they're trying to make it trendy, and it's getting some attention. So
for sure.
But yeah, it's called Shiny Happy People, Amazon Video if you have that. And it's all about the Duggars, and not just the Duggars, really. It's about the church that they come from.
Yeah.
But the IBLP, it's a lot about that.
I had no idea that they were so heavily affiliated to that background.
Which I think is what's going to make this documentary 10 times more interesting, is it's actually the Duggars are a byproduct of these teachings. So this is really about almost a Christianity fundamentalist cult.
Yeah,
exactly. Really what this is almost about. That's much more fascinating. I think the myth of the Duggars is not that interesting to people anymore.
It's like another branch of the FLDS kind of thing is what it gives me.
It is kind of like that. It's like a very slightly less, I don't even know if it's a little bit more liberal. It feels like slightly more liberal than the FLDS.
Yeah.
Just slightly more liberal. Only because they do interact with the real world. And the FLDS is really like our borders, nobody else.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? Yeah. But people are very fascinated by these like Christianity cults.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And how
I think what's the one thing that's so fascinating about them is how they're able to really like mind warp these people.
Absolutely.
Which obviously, if you watch a documentary, you'll learn that in this particular religion that the Duggars believed in, which is what IBLP,
yeah,
IBLP, right? They are essentially able to brainwash these individuals from birth to adulthood by giving parents curriculum to homeschool their kids and teaching them the ways of the church from that standpoint, which is very strange to me. Like, how is a church allowed to even submit homeschool curriculum?
It's one of those things. It's like freedom of religion and religious tenets, you know? So it's like, nobody can't really stop them. It's like the people who support them, you know?
Yeah, that's true. And I guess it's really about who is willing to teach their kids that, because homeschooling obviously doesn't follow the same rules and regulations that state schools would.
Yeah, and that's why state schools were instituted, is because you have stuff like this. There was like, state schools were created so there's some standard of education that is non-religious, which actually prepares your child at least on a basic line. Now you can, college is, you know, up in the air and you go educate yourself and that sort of thing. But at least there is a baseline so that all children can be educated, and they can be educated in a way that gives them the opportunity to not just be indoctrinated.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Although some people can say that public school is a form of indoctrination too. And I think there are some tenets of indoctrination in public school too. I think it's not as extreme as something like the IBLP or the FLDS.
Like the FLDS. Yeah. The FLDS is even more. Did the kids even go to school?
I don't even know if they really even went to school. Now I'm thinking about it, because I watched the other documentary too, which was Keep Sweet and Pray and Obey.
Yeah, that was a good one too.
Yeah, that's a good documentary. And so I don't know. That documentary focused so much on Warren Jeffs and how much of a criminal he was.
Oh yeah, and his followers.
And his followers, which I think they're going to get into a little bit more of that. The Duggars. Keep in mind, we've only watched the first episode of this, so whatever we don't know, we don't know. So we could be, you know, saying things that come up in future episodes. But it's very interesting watching this, because it's so different than how we were raised. And I would say we were raised in a Southern Baptist church, Black Southern Baptist church. I want to make that very clear. And there's just our relationship with Jesus was always very liberal, I guess you could say. Yeah. With the religion was, we live our lives, we do things. Of course, there's a code of conduct that you're supposed to follow, like as a Christian. Yeah. But it definitely does not control your life. And you don't control it, really. It's more about a personal relationship with a higher power. Yeah.
But, you know, the funny thing is, so some of the things that they're talking about that they had experienced, first of all, as the Duggars, then as people of the church, which we haven't seen as much of. We kind of get like a base understanding of what the church represents and its ideologies, right? But we haven't gotten to the nitty gritty yet. But it has quite a bit of ties to the Southern Baptist Church of like authority of, You pretty much
Hierarchy.
do what I say. Men are it. Women are just property.
Yep.
Children are just a form of property, and that you should just obey what I, as pastor, as figurehead of this church, is saying, and you will make it to heaven. Pretty much. That's
Most
pretty much
definitely,
what's
yeah.
going on.
What I really gather from this is that there are certain tenets and certain practices that these institutions practice on a major scale that lead to what they call like salvation and meeting Jesus, but are actually also exactly the same things that are used for mind control. Like they're the identical, dressed up differently, say different things. Because removing, not giving people freedom to choose their clothing, something simple. Okay, your identity is linked to what we say, and then people, even the idea of education being controlled. Okay, you're not learning about the outside, so you only know what we are teaching you.
Yeah, exactly.
The idea of things that are from the secular world are all inherently bad. So it's this us versus them mentality, which is all about that's what cult leaders do. That's what people, even like, you could take somebody like Charles Manson. That was their idea too. He didn't necessarily have Jesus behind him, but that's what he was telling his followers too. It's like all of these things that are dressed up as religion are also identical to ways of mind control and ways of,
for sure. Yeah, very
cult
true.
Creating, really.
I am glad. Interesting. Yeah, it is very interesting. I'm very glad that they brought the cousin in on there, because she seems like she was their outside source of like information, if that makes sense. Because they were so like rigid in like their teachings and things like that they were getting from their parents, homeschooling, because they were homeschooled through the church's curriculum and then the church, right? So they didn't have the outside world outside of that cousin. And she was also very like, nope, I'm not like y'all.
Exactly, yeah.
Which I'm sure the kids probably saw that and were like, oh, I can be something different. Because I wonder if they had never seen that, would they be different?
That's a good question. I thought about that too. I was like, this documentary gathers so many people. Like the Duggars themselves aren't necessarily in here, but the people surrounding them, they went deep and got the people surrounding them.
Oh,
and
they
like
did.
You said, the cousin was a big one who I think, she was from the outside world, but she dipped her toe in with them and still continued to love them as her, family.
Yeah, exactly. And his friend, Jim Baum's friend, came.
His friend came.
Which I'm assuming he was a follower.
Yeah, I think he was a follower of the for the church.
Exactly. And then I'm assuming he has left at this point. And even the sister of Jim Bob, because he was saying like, I don't think they were raised like that. Which is interesting. Like, I wonder, like, what was his childhood like from his experience for him to go seek out?
Halfway traumatic, but it didn't sound like it was deeply traumatic. At least it didn't sound
but he only told us a part of it. So I don't know. We don't know because we don't know the full extent of the story. But what I will say is I do wonder if something tragic happened, or maybe like, I don't know, maybe something really terrible did happen for him to go to a place like that for like sanctuary. It's very strange. Like a lot of your cults, and that's what I'm going to call it because that's what it is, are targeting people who are looking for some sort of like sanctuary refuge after a traumatic maybe event or time in life or X, Y, and Z. So vulnerable people, right?
Yeah.
Who are going to follow what this figurehead says. So I just wonder, like, how do we get here, Jim Bob? How do we get here?
Exactly. Yeah. It was hearing a little bit of their backstory, because I don't think we ever got that on the show. I don't think we just assumed Jim Bob and Michelle just showed up and like decided to have 19 kids, So I think this is one of the first times that we really got to see them kind of like hear their backstory as well as what their kids were saying. But yeah, I did wonder, like, how did Jim Bob, how did he come to it? They kind of stopped that early. They didn't really get into the whole, like, I guess, nitty gritty, and they didn't have Jim Bob to answer for himself. So, so yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess I could see him probably being a vulnerable young man and or looking for something
Yeah.
and trying and then coming upon this religious group of people.
Mm-hmm.
So I will say I've met people as an adult who have that kind of Jim Bob-esque mentality, if that makes sense. Like you can tell they have transitioned to the adult secular world where they have to like deal with people, but they come from a deeply religious background. And I'm telling you, you can kind of spot them because they don't really have that worldly knowledge, the like comfortability in worldly knowledge, if that makes sense.
True. Yeah.
Like we have always been a part of the secular world. We've always been that has always been available to us. And I'm not saying we didn't have Christian teachings in our household because we did have Christian teachings.
True. Yeah.
But we always were comfortable in like, okay, if we saw somebody kissing on TV, we didn't have to like avert our eyes, or we could wear shorts, or we could wear, mini dresses or tank tops and stuff. Like we were encouraged to exist we were encouraged to bring our religious spirit, I guess, into the secular world. It was never like to shut off us and them,
Yeah,
and I think that's so dangerous. So dangerous.
Yeah.
And then some people, they don't get that until much later in their life when they are adults. And then by that point, you're already confronting the secular world daily. So I think it's really dangerous to not have them have that understanding.
For sure. And I just wonder, like, as the kids have, grown up and made their own choices and things like that, I wonder what the impact of that is, because now you're going into the world with this extra layer of vulnerability because you're naive.
Exactly.
And you think the world looks one way because that's what you were taught. And now it doesn't look like that, and now you have choice in choosing for it to look different. Exactly. So I wonder, I mean, obviously I probably need to keep watching, but the one daughter that decided to be on the documentary was Jill, right? Jill?
Yeah, Jill. She's like one of the older sisters.
So it's just interesting to me to see like her talking about it, which they didn't really show her much in the first episode. There's just like a automatic internal turmoil that she's in of just like, I guess maybe how did we get this far?
Yeah.
Because ultimately the parents chose to give their children this,
Yeah.
Which I, as the parent, is your job to kind of do what's best for your children. But was this rooted in a level of selfishness?
Agreed. I agree. I think there is some selfishness with parents who do like the fundamental, very strict way of life, because that's your outlook. And you have the ability and the agency to choose whether you want to continue to participate in this or not.
Exactly.
Or not. This child doesn't. They're doing whatever you say do. And like, that's their relationship with Christ. That's their relationship with whoever. And like I think if you're going to be a parent who's going to be in religion, I think you should always, the children should be consenting to that religious upbringing,
It's just like writing an argument for a paper. You present both sides, so then you can make your argument. Same thing when you're raising kids, I think. And I don't want any parents like coming at us because we know how y'all girlies like to tussle. But I do think it's you set your children up in a way for one to do a lot of undoing when you don't present the reality of what things may be, or even if you present your reality, that there is another opinion or an opposition to this reality, right? And you have to then choose which reality you want to participate in. And that's kind of like what our mom did, is provide us two realities, and you figure out where you lie in the middle. It's not my job to make that decision for you. Which I'm very grateful for, because hearing this, I was just like,
oh yeah,
if we were raised by our other parent, sperm donor, it would have been bad.
Yeah.
Not from his sake, because I don't think he was religious, but his mother's sake, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So.
And then also, like what Catelyn said, we have a choice to, culturally, when we were young, we were going to church with our mother, and there was like no say in it just because it's like Sunday, get up, go to church. The
Mm-hmm.
truth is we didn't know and we didn't have a relationship with Jesus. So we were like, it was performative, strictly performative for us.
100%. Yeah.
But I think as we got to be teenagers, it was like, okay, you can either choose to do this or not.
Mm-hmm. Which I think part of that choosing for like our mom specifically was out of, I'm not going to go back and forth with you guys. I don't know if she willingly was just like, oh, well.
I mean, I think our mother obviously would have preferred that we were like, you know, in church and Bible study every Wednesday night and doing XYZ. And nothing, I'm not here to say that Bible study every Wednesday night is bad. I'm not saying that. And actually, I want to caveat, none of what we're saying about religion is to say that religion itself is bad. We're looking at this critically so that we, like, how do we survive as adults? Even if we are going to be religious people, how do we survive in the world as adults? Because the reality is most of the rest of the world is probably not either practicing your direct religion or they don't believe in it at all. So there is a world you have to walk in where your beliefs are going to be countered by somebody.
Yeah, and I think to add to that too is in the world, a lot of what we do in the world, it really has no religious ties.
Yeah, and it's important to know that stuff. Like, you got to know it to survive it.
Exactly, yeah.
You can't, I mean, as much as I want to pray to Jesus, and I pray to Jesus actually all the time, as much as I want Jesus to come magically out of the sky and fix some stuff, some shit, Courtney's got to get up and do it herself. Yeah. That's just reality, you know? Sorry to curse, but yeah, that's just the truth, you know?
Yeah, and there's just some things that, like, it's something simple like, you know, paying bills. Well, you can't expect your bills to be paid, personally speaking, by just sitting on your butt every day and being like, God's going to save me. There has to be a level of work, getting up and doing what you got to do, and also believing, you know? So there is a level of, I think, delusion in a lot of spiritual, not even necessarily spiritual, more of like religious practices.
Yeah. And some of them, not all of them.
Not all of them, yes.
But, I mean, I think it lends itself to the possibility of, like, the other world is what's going to save me here on Earth, which people can get swept up in. And I think you got to have a healthy balance knowing that we are still here on Earth, you know? Because really, the truth is everybody would be religious if I could just send up a prayer and my bills magically got paid.
For sure.
Everybody would be on that train. That's the easier train, actually.
No, for real.
But
and don't be wrong, I would love to do that. But it's not realistic.
Like, who wouldn't? I'd be praying for shit all day, to be honest.
Honey. Yeah. I'm praying for Amazon to be my business so they can drop off all my orders right at the door, period.
Exactly. So, like, but it's like we don't live in that world, unfortunately. We don't, you know? And so it's important to know what the world we do live in so you can handle yourself and have a religious, you know, a spiritual strength, fortitude that you have as a foundation to help you endure the challenges of the world. But you can't not know what the world is. You can't be delusional about the world, you know? And I think what we saw this in the Duggar documentary, just to bring it back to that, I think they were cutting their kids off to the point of delusion. That's what it feels like. You know what I mean? And then they were insulating predators too. It's like their son, frankly, they didn't want to call him one, but like that's what he really was doing. Yeah. They were like insulating somebody who was deviant in some ways, you know, from their teachings. And as he's continued to deviate, they continued to sort of protect him via this, you know, religious community and religious teaching, which was patriarchal. It was patriarchal. So
yeah, and let's be clear, they didn't only protect him; they enabled him in the sense that they pretty much allowed him to hide under the guise of being this Christian guy who was pretty much doing everything he needed to repent and be this holier than thou guy while still perpetrating. And they were doing anything possible to make sure that anything that he was doing that was not in alignment with their religious beliefs was hidden, not addressed. So
exactly. And the thing is, that's not uncommon in the secular world. The secular world does it all the time.
I mean, even in our Southern Baptist church, it happens all the time.
Exactly. Yeah, I was like, it happens at jobs. It happens at schools. It happens
walking down the street.
Walking down the street. Like, these institutions are deeply patriarchal, and they're there to protect the hierarchy, which is men. Who suffers behind that? The women and girls, even their own daughters, their own other children. So think about that. They are deeply, deeply ingrained in this patriarchal, misogynistic culture.
Yeah, very, very.
So,
even when it comes down to like they were explaining how the TV show, I guess one of the cameramen asked the mom about, her basically feeding into gender roles and stereotypes of gender. And she was just saying, I think it's a good thing. And it's like, to an extent, I get what you're saying. I think gender roles can be at least a fire under your butt to do things, right? But to limit your girls to only taking care of the house, doing laundry,
and cleaning up after their brothers.
When I look back on the TV show, that's all you saw doing those things were their little girls, So are you having kids to be slaves? Is that not slavery?
And then I don't remember what the boys were doing, but I guess they were playing, chopping wood. I don't know. And that sets up the dynamic of what women not only do the lion's share of the domestic labor, they're also the kin keepers, are keeping the family together. They're keeping watch over the boys, right?
And the children.
And so these boys are being groomed from an early age that they do not have to contribute to this household.
Yeah. And outside of financially, the only thing you have to contribute is financially, right? And make babies. That's all you need to contribute. And that should be good enough. So imagine the mind warp that you're teaching these girls, which I'm very proud of the girls that we do see. They seem very independent. They seem very on top of it, and a more conservative, outlook on life, I think. But they're definitely not abiding by that. You can tell. Which is good to see, I think, for their sake, because I feel like they, even as kids, I remember them being so happy, watching the Duggar show. But now looking back at it and seeing some of the clips that they play in the first episode from the Duggar show, it's like those kids did not look happy.
Yeah, no, I know. I started a little bit of the second episode, and they were saying that even that kind of performative softness, that meekness and mildness, that they were the mom was always like, okay, kids, make sure you go to bed. Let's go to sleep, girls. Her voice was always even keel, always very meek and diminutive. And they were saying that was a performance, that she was a cheerleader when she was, young. So she knows how to yell, and that it's not at all normal that they just kind of perform this meek, mild temperament as women.
Even how I didn't know this, but they had a rule in the house where they could not argue.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I understand that with that many kids, there has to be some level of just trying to keep the peace, on a basic surface level. Obviously there's a little bit more rooted into religious purposes or whatever. But, in our household, we were not raised to argue, but we were definitely allowed to state our opinions. And strong opinions now, and fight for what we believe to be correct and right and things like that in a constructive way for the most part. Yeah. But that is fundamental.
Nobody was. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that was just fundamental to us being who we are today, allowing us to have the voices to speak up and do the things that we do today, and how we present them and how we say things and blah 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 blah. Right. So it's also very interesting that Jill, the one Duggar that was on there, also still could not talk about those things today. She still felt like she had to keep it a secret, even to the point of her and her husband, he starts to talk when she gets emotional and things like that. And he's pretty much we were going to take this to our grave. And it's what? What?
They probably fear ramifications from their parents.
I wonder if are the parents still a part of their life, and are the parents still in the church?
I don't know. I mean, they're adults now, so they don't have to deal with their parents if they don't want to. But
no, I agree. But I mean, in that type of mind warp, it's just kind of how the Jehovah's Witness, when you get you get kicked out or whatever, your whole family goes too. I couldn't imagine that, especially in a church like that where this is your community. That's all you know.
Yeah, I really don't know. I would want to see what the Duggars are up to now, because I know the baby's got to be kind of halfway, at least preteens, teenagers, right?
Yeah, she has to be. Yeah, Josie, because she was back in early. I think it was like early 2000, like 10, 13, something like that. She
Yeah,
was
they had their
just
last kid.
born.
I think they had their last kid like 2015 ish, something like that.
And she was like in her 40s at that point, right?
Yeah. Which, you know what also bothered me, and we did really, actually, this is a small thing they brushed over. We're not discussing Michelle's health. 20 children?
Facts.
I'm sorry. And then the 20th one, she almost had 20. I don't know if she had 20. I think she ended up 19. Maybe she had 20. But getting to be about 20 children, that woman was pregnant a lot. Which means, you know, obviously there's probably more conception going on, right? Like, I feel like it could not have been that healthy for her to be pregnant like that at that age, those ages. That she had to have been pregnant.
40s, right? Like her 30s, 40s when she was conceiving at least the latter children.
Exactly. Yeah, it's very, I don't know. Everything about it was like, I just think, and maybe that's just our social conditioning. Maybe biologically our bodies can handle that much birth. But something says to me that, you know, you might tap out at 5 and that's really pushing it. But like 19, 20 kids, I'm like, is Michelle okay?
No, facts. I wonder like mentally. But you know, the thing is, from what we could see on the TV show, it really looked like that a lot of the other kids were raising a lot of the other kids.
They had to have been. They had to have been.
Yeah, they
she
had
was
to be.
pregnant. She was pregnant the entire series. It was, and that's unfair to your children because they did not have these kids, and now they are tasked with raising their brothers and sisters because, frankly, mom's like barefoot and pregnant all the time. You know,
pretty much, yeah.
I know they love their siblings, but it's also like I know you had, you know, as one of those older girls like Jill. You know, you get 8, 9 deep, and you're like, you have another one. You don't have another, like, that would start to make me like, oh my God, I got another baby to basically raise, you know?
Yeah, pretty much. Which on the TV show, when they did the TV show, I think it was like Good Morning America, some major TV interview or whatever. The kids, they were like, oh, you know, the mom and dad are like, we're pregnant again. Yeah, excited. The kids are like, oh, here we go again.
And I just think also parents don't have, in today's world, you do not have the resources to take care of 19 kids.
Yeah.
I don't think even back in the day when people would have 10, 11 kids or however much I don't think they had the resources. I don't think you can properly give the level of nurturing you need to give to a child. Because even like, you know, primates have like, gorillas will have 1 or 2 kids throughout their life, 3 or 4 maybe. You know, that's how they populate. But like 10, 11?
No, oof. And, you know, and I hate to make, this is not an excuse by any means possible, but logistically speaking, if you take emotions out of it, right? It makes sense that Josh was able to perpetrate against his siblings. And why? Because his parents could not watch 19 children. Couldn't. Literally could not. So it is not even shocking that was allowed, first of all, and able to happen without the parents' knowledge. Exactly. There's no way. There's just no way. And then, like, it's just, I really think this family had less concern about those kids. And more about their own selfishness.
Or their own religious beliefs.
And their own religious
like this kingdom, you know, because I think they said in there that like they consider like a man successful if he has so many children, if he's able to fill the quiver, something like that.
And whose prophecy were they fulfilling?
That the man Bill Gothard, which is killing me because I'm like, what I've noticed about conservative religions and conservative ideologies is there's always this idea of having as many children as possible. Like the idea, like pro-life, have children, continue to have children. And it's not because we're considered about the mother or the children themselves. It's just strictly about male lineage. Yeah, it's strictly because it's like male lineage and this is your duty to fulfill as a man. It means that you are somehow successful as a man because you've been able to procreate.
And I think, too, that it's also a matter of, like, numbers. The numbers will push this ideology. Just numbers. And so, especially when you have them from children to adulthood, you're allowed to, like, fully penetrate someone's brain if this is all they know.
Yeah.
I feel like it's different from, like, me being brainwashed from, like, me joining a cult now. Me being brainwashed would be a little bit more difficult than, not even a little bit, a lot more difficult, because I have experienced life. I've experienced the outside world. So I'm comparing this new experience to this to know, okay, this is giving cult. Mm-hmm. If you do not have that, now we're looking at, this is all I know, right? Exactly. So you having 19 children, that's 19 people that are most likely going to continue to do what mom and dad did with just the two of them. Exactly. Or, you know,
I agree. Like, and that's part of this patriarchal like plan, is like the idea of, we grow this population, we encourage people to have so many children that we basically create this little army. Mm-hmm. Right. So again, we need to populate it. We're using women's bodies to do it, women and girls' bodies to do it, but we're going to repopulate. And the more numbers we have, the bigger our, quote, army will be, right? Like army of the Lord will be. Mm-hmm. And we will be then able to take over. So they like populate from within, you know?
Pretty much, yeah.
Versus trying to, frankly, recruit people. I mean, I think they take efforts to recruit others as well, but they really, really push having large numbers or having lots of children so that they can then go and like spread the word. You know, this is very similar to the script that I'm working on. And actually, I'm going to take some of the parts of the Duggars and kind of like weave it in there, because I think it's really, because some of the like obscure things that they were talking about, I was like, now that's very weird. You know, very interesting. You could play on that. But, you know, I was thinking about it and I was like, that's what a conservative patriarchal pushback is to keep women pregnant and having children so that they serve the greater purpose of continuing this legacy or this ideology, you know?
Yeah, for real.
And I think that this is very sinister. It's very sinister because it's like weaponizing sexual encounters, you know? And weaponizing birth in some weird way, you know? So yeah, it's all very interesting to me. Very interesting.
Very, yeah.
And I think, something else we should discuss, which I thought they brought up in here very well, was the media's portrayal of them. Like how they got involved with media organizations. Like it was at first Discovery, then it became TLC. And how the media not only, you know, put a spotlight on them, but also created this kind of mainstream caricature of them. Yeah. And started selling that to the public. And that it was kind of like you watch our back, we watch yours. So these big media companies are making buku money off of them because people that find them so interesting and so weird and so like, you know, not in the norm. And then the religious community is getting a spotlight shined on them in the biggest way they possibly can, which is mainstream America, you know?
Pretty much. So along with spreading this biblical ideology being heavily pushed into this world, and people are seeing it looking like a package present, and people are like, I want to be a part of that. I want to be that happy. I want to do this. So now free publicity. It's marketing. That's really what it came down to.
It became like marketing, and then the media companies don't care because they're making the money.
Right.
Like, they deliver up there to make the money, you know? So I think there was some irresponsibility on the media's part too, because they are putting this really conservative, slightly dangerous idea out there to the masses under this kind of like, look at how weird these people are, you know? And then the religious community is still steady getting their message across, possibly bringing in new recruits, you know? Yeah, it was just, I don't know. I'm excited to continue watching this documentary because it's so probing, I think. And I don't think they have been explored the way that they should be explored. and
Very true.
thought about critically the way that they should be, like we all just kind of were like 19 kids, and we would all be like, don't want to be like the Duggars, ha ha. Like it was just such a joke, you know. And now we're like, now that like stuff has come out about like the FLDS and Warren Jeffs and those communities, now we see it and we're like, oh no. This is like some, honestly, kind of like Jim Jones stuff, you know?
100%. Like, yeah. And I think, obviously, with social media and things like that, we know we are inclined to know more through people telling their stories. But it's hard to penetrate those communities and really find out what's really going on.
Exactly.
And that's part of why they're successful.
Yeah. Because it's like they're in our backyards, you know?
But we know nothing about it.
We know nothing about them. It's like those weird people over there who we see at school, but we don't like interact with. And so they shine a spotlight on them, you know. And, you know, and actually while I was watching, I was thinking about this. There were people at our high school that honestly reminded me of the Duggars. Like, I don't know if they were in that kind of vibe, but there were people at our high school, at least I came across them in certain classes, who had that very like fundamentalist type religious ideology, and had been homeschooled that I had known, and had kind of the idea of like purity culture, you know.
You know what's interesting about that? Me going to the college that I decided to go to, kind of eat, sleeps, and breathe this pretty much. Because they were heavily religious. It was a religious school, period. But it definitely ate this up. And it's pretty much the same thing, you know? Of just go and do what God tells you to do. Just because he says it, aka me as your leader, do what I tell you to do because God spoke through me, kind of thing. Don't ask questions, do what you're told, procreate, and be a good wife.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, I don't know. It's very interesting to see people, you know, we wouldn't treat them like differently necessarily, but it was like something about you. Like we know that, you know, you've been integrated into public school now, but we know that you, wherever you came from, whatever you're doing before, has definitely had this impact on your life enough to change the way you walk in the world.
Oh,
you know?
100%.
For sure. And like, actually something I was thinking about is like, we have people in our family who are very, quote, devout, right? I have to kind of laugh when I say devout because that's just very hypocritical isn't even the word, but they sort of do this performance of like being very Christian and being very religious and going to church every Sunday and Bible study and like this whole like performance and like not wearing pants and like, you know, whatever to Jesus. And it's just so interesting that so many of like so much of the performance is in direct contrast to what we know to be true about their actual lives. You know, which reminded me of the Duggars.
That's an interesting topic. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, we don't have to get into it, but it's just very
interesting.
It made me think about some stuff that I was like,
that we've experienced for sure.
That we have.
There's a lot of parallels.
Yeah, and it's not even. It made me think that this isn't always just a black or a white thing because you know the Duggars and their community is strictly white, which we could get into the racial parts of that too.
But that like goes back to my question of like, what did you experience or how did you get to this point of being that susceptible? You know,
I don't know.
I don't get it. That's what I don't understand. And that's not to say that like to not be religious or spiritual or anything and not believe in God, but susceptible to just anything this man is throwing at you is what's wild to me.
Or to be swayed enough to make major changes in your life.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, okay, that's a big change to say my kids are going to be homeschooled now. That's a big change. You're disrupting.
Or go from I'm going to just have 2 kids to now I have 19.
Yep.
They don't. I don't know.
And to burn, like, they were, I don't know if you saw this part, but they were, like, burning Disney books. You might have gotten to that.
Oh, I didn't get that part. No, that must be in episode 2.
Yeah, it's probably in episode 2.
Got
But they were, like, Disney, any kind of, like, sign of the outside world, which might promote, like, you know, romance, or they call, basically everything is pornography to them. Anything that remotely, any kind of kissing, any kind of lustfulness is, like, pornography to them. So
gosh.
they were like, burn the Disney books. You can only watch these tapes that we set up from the IBLP. You can't watch any normal, I don't say normal, but you can't watch cable TV. That kind of thing. Like, you only, like, go certain places. You can't go to dances. You can't, like, typical teenage stuff that helps you learn and explore your own boundaries and somewhat sexuality, but also just romantic
your likes
interests.
and dislikes.
Your likes and dislikes. Those things that would help you to explore that, you don't. You're getting cut off from, you know?
I didn't see that part. But, you know, another thing that was also very shocking, that's to get on your point that you were trying to make. That's crazy that you are that insistent on blocking out the real world when Disney is literally a fantasy.
Fantasy and Disney is so redacted and cliche that, like, it's so rated G, you know?
Facts. And, like, even the kiss thing, it's like a peck. But I'm not here to knock anyone's religion if that's what you believe in. But that's just interesting. But, you know, another thing that was really shocking to me, I didn't realize that Jim Bob was into politics.
Oh, yeah, that was news to me, too.
I had
no idea.
That was
news to me. But it makes sense if they have this kind of world domination mentality of, like, our ideologies need to get pushed out there to as many people as possible.
Yeah.
And including changing state legislature, you know, to ensure that happens. Which I think is, it's like, you can do that, you know, in your corner of the woods, but everybody doesn't believe that. You know, and you can't, like, push that on everybody. But, yeah, he was in the Senate for, like, 4 years, I think they said.
I thought it was 8 years because he ran twice. Well, I guess he didn't make it in the second one, right? Something like that.
No, I think he had 2 terms, but it was, like, 2 years terms.
Okay.
So it was, like, 4 years total. And he didn't win. He was trying to get to the Senate, the U.S. Senate. And he didn't make the bid for the U.S. Senate, but he made the bid for, like, the state.
Got it.
And he became, like, a state representative or something, or a senator.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Well, yeah, no, that was really shocking to me, which, like you said, it makes sense on how they were able to, or why they were trying to push that agenda. And it also makes sense on why they were very adamant about hiding Josh's lifestyle of molesting children. Because they had more face to save.
Yeah.
You know, and he was supposed to be the next one in politics. He was in politics in some points, I think. On top of Jim Bob, the dad, had pushed a bill or signed a bill or something like that to make sure that child predators are, or just any predator, sexual offenders and things like that, are able to be, I guess, like, followed or documented or something like that. He pushed some type of bill against sex offenders. And you breeding one. You out here growing one. Wow, to me. Which also, too, another thing is, I wonder what or if anything happened to Josh. Because a lot of kids learn those things from other kids, maybe, or even other experience from adults and things like that. So, like, what happened to Josh?
I don't know. Well, you know, Josh is the oldest child that they have. So Josh it sounded like Josh had a little bit of a different access to the outside world. Because remember, they said he had a group of boys he was hanging out with.
But I think it was through the church.
Oh, was it?
Because they were in the church by then.
Well, that don't mean that stuff couldn't have happened.
Oh, true. But that's what I'm saying. Like, I wonder if something happened in the church.
It could have been something in the church, too. That's
what I'm thinking.
I don't know. I wouldn't put it past anybody, because maybe it was introduced to him somehow.
Yeah, for sure.
And he introduced it, you know, to others. But yeah, I don't know. I mean,
you know what's another thing that's always shocking to me?
What?
Josh's wife still sticking beside him. That is wild to me. We have to talk about that maybe in another episode.
He
but
got
it's like
kids too.
He has kids, and your kids are possibly at jeopardy. It's giving very much Jim Bob's wife, the mom, of like, I'm just doing what I'm told to do. And it's like, which hopefully she's like filed by divorce by now, because he's not getting out anytime soon. But like, look at the life that you have created for your children. What if your children have been violated?
That's true.
And you chose to stick around it. This isn't the first scandal he's had about being, a sex offender. And he's not even a sex offender. He's a freaking pedo. Like, I'm not understanding, ma'am. If that's not a red flag to get the fuck out and run, I don't know what is. I don't know how much more red it could get. Like, right now, it's fucking crimson red.
I don't know either. I think as an adult woman, I think people do this whole like, well, my husband comes before my kids and blah, blah, blah. And I think you can get mad at me, fight me in the comments, but I think your kids always have to come before any of the adults and men in your life, because you have a responsibility to protect the vulnerable children. And if you allow even somebody as close to you as your husband to take advantage of the children, and you put his interests above your own children, I'm sorry. To me, you have to answer for that. You can answer to Jesus for that, because you're just as much a part of it as he is, in my opinion.
For sure.
And like continue to do it. And there's lots of women who do that.
Very true.
Who stand by men who are predators against other girls and women, or predators against their own children.
Pretty much.
I think if you know your husband, your mate, your partner is a predator to any other being, and you stay by them and you allow it to continue, you are a part of the problem.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. 100%. There was actually a true crime case that I was watching, and the mom was like bringing, I think it was like 3 or 4 little girls, but she was bringing her children to their dad to have relations with him on a weekly basis. No. Their children.
That's so disgusting.
Because he wanted them to know how. This is disgusting. Like when he listening to this, which I always listen to these at work, I was infuriated. I was like, I really can't even work anymore. I was so disturbed. But I obviously had to push through. But anyways, he said that he needed to teach the little girls how to take care of their husbands. And so that's why he was molesting his children.
I heard that on the To Catch a Predator episode I was watching. This man, he was like 70 years old. He thought he was going to meet a dad and a daughter who was willing to sleep with each other and then sleep with him in like a threesome. That's why he was went to go. That's how he got caught. It's because he was about to go do that. And he said in the episode, I think parents should be a part of their children's sexual activities to show them how to do it. I was like, you're fucking sick. I was like, get him
gross.
ASAP.
Seriously.
And he said he had slept with a 13-year-old before.
It's disgusting.
Yeah.
Literally disgusting. I like, that's something that I just cannot rationalize with. And I really don't care to rationalize with. But like, doing something like that to a child is just like, crazy. Unbearable. It's unbearable to even like wrap your head around. It's like, first of all, how do we? And the thing is, I feel like a lot of those behaviors are rooted in trauma, and it probably happened to them. But there has got to be some fucking boundaries. There has got to be. It's disgusting.
And also, something I'm realizing too, now that I'm thinking about it, is it's really important to teach your children how to speak up and speak out early in their life.
Yeah.
Because I was realizing that in the To Catch a Predator episodes, the reason why these people were able to do that is because the undercover officers who were playing little girls were very agreeable. They were very, like the Duggar girls, very agreeable, very whatever you say goes, and sort of meek up, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm willing to try this because you said
they're going to keep
blah,
it a secret.
Yeah. And I thought about like, I would have been saying at 13 and 14, I'd been like, what are you doing in my house? Like, we would have been very like not the kind of kids, which is important that our mother empowered us to do that. Because not only as little girls, we got to protect ourselves even as prepubescent little girls, because there are predators out there. So it's important to start early so that your kids know how to speak up and advocate for themselves, because imagine he had gotten away with that, right? Or like the Duggar boy had gotten away with it.
So what did he keep doing? He kept on offending. He kept on doing. Nothing changed.
We were empowered at very early ages to be like, no, this isn't right. This isn't okay. You don't do this. That's not how you're supposed to XYZ. And it's important. But we didn't have that indoctrination of be meek, be mild, allow men to lead, that was not part of our upbringing. And it probably saved us because some of our family members are problematic. We'll just say that.
Not even problematic. We are predatory. Their victims, period.
We are predatory family members.
Exactly.
So us learning to speak up and speak out early on is necessary to our self-protection. Even now as adult women, we still have to negotiate in interactions with people all the time, even if they're not romantic interactions. You still are constantly telling. I had to tell some dude the other day, to get away from me. I was just walking into a store, those are the kind of boundaries you have to learn to set up and to stand in as children, as little girls and little boys.
Mm-hmm. And I think too, even us, we had experienced what we experienced, and we were given the voice to speak up and tell our mom, and we waited a pretty long time. So, I don't think you could do it enough. It's overkill. Really is what you're teaching your kid to speak up for and create boundaries for and respect himself for and different things like that, so that you can try to mitigate all of these issues. Because unfortunately, as a parent, you cannot be there for everything. You can't.
Exactly. So. And I was going to say something. I don't remember. Oh yeah, I was going to say, you just don't know what situation they would be in a predatory type situation. You don't know. So the best thing you can do is tell them hey, this is XYZ is not correct, and empower them to speak up.
Exactly. And if this happens to you, please feel free to come and tell me. You should let your child know this is a safe space to come communicate anything that you feel like is not right.
Yep. Exactly.
And even how there was one part before we end and wrap it up, but the mom was don't ever say the word molestation when it refers to her son doing things to her children. It's to me, that also shows a level of favoritism. You're willing to protect him at the cost of the damage that he's doing to your other children.
And it's do you value your daughter's experiences?
Mm-hmm.
It's you're showing that you really don't totally value your daughter's the same way that you value
your son.
Your son.
Mm-hmm. Crazy.
And it's that happens in so many households. So many households that, people get the message that their daughter's experiences are not valued nearly as much as their son's.
Mm-hmm.
Bad behavior. And it happens at work too. Is when, the Me Too movement, when women are not believed because of, harassment or whatever, it's they're valuing this man's experience or this man's behavior and his experience, I guess, over a woman's violation,
Pretty much, yeah.
And our entire society is really, really, that's deeply embedded into our society. That if men do something to violate somebody, he should be given grace, or maybe it just wasn't like this, or we're encouraged to think about it differently versus recognizing that we were victimized and listening to the victim and punishing the person who stepped out of line.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And self-preservation, really.
Yeah. And that's why when predators get convicted, it's usually a pattern of behavior because they've gotten away with it. And it's because of patriarchal thinking that, so-and-so just didn't know, or the girls were told to stay quiet, or the boys were told to stay quiet, right? That is another male privilege, is to be able to violate people and still go on with life. That's a privilege, So I'm not saying privilege in the sense that is right to do, but to be able to do wrong, violate somebody, and not suffer the maximum consequences often. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And have the world kind of insulate you in that. So.
Very true.
But yeah, the Duggar documentary was good. I'm excited to keep watching it for sure. Maybe we'll do an update episode on future.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe once you finish them all or something like that.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be watching. It's on Amazon Prime Video, like we said. And we hope our conversation definitely helped you think about some things differently. or just thinking about some new things as it relates to this documentary and this family. And the kind of like, they're like a cultural phenomenon. So, you know.
Very true. Well, thanks for watching, guys. It was a pleasure having another chat with you, Courtney.
Mm-hmm. Same. Had to be about the Duggars, though. I guess that's weird, but, you know.
Well, this conversation needs to be had, and I'm excited to finish the documentary so we can have more conversations, because though they were not seen as problematic, they have turned out to be problematic. It's not always how it happens.
It always is.
That's always how it happens.
It always is.
It never
would be
fails.
good to put them in conversation with the FLDS.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I would say. I would venture to say.
Definitely compare notes.
Yeah, they're definitely sharing their practices, clearly.
And maybe that's just how conservative religions work, is they all have that same sort of ideology, and they have those same, you know, tenets and practices and kind of control and patriarchal ideologies, you know. I don't know. Yeah. I think that might just be what... That might be why I'm so turned off from religion. It's because it all feels sort of like just incarnations of that, you know?
Yeah. I can see that. So, well, guys, thanks for watching. Make sure to join us in our next episode, and we will see you guys next Friday.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.